Good evening. Okay, let's just wait for the others. Am I audible?
Yes po, miss.
Okay, thank you. We are finishing Tipping the Velvet by Sarah Waters tonight. So I hope you were able to read chapter 14. That's the climax. Okay, that's the part where all the kinds of othering have happened in the entire chapter, okay, chapter 14. So I hope you were able to read it. But if you're not able to read it, then I will point out in some of those pages, the exact othering scenes. All right. Okay. So wait, let me share my screen for a while. Oh wait, there's Angelus. #43. Here we will find out the story of Zena or Blake, the maid of Mrs. Diana Lenby. And here we see that she had a tragic history. Okay, and if you remember, she was called Blake, but it turned out that she has a real name, and that was Zena. Okay, so that was one thing about othering also. Name calling is also a type of othering. Okay, and she was being called Blake, which is a masculine name. She was seen as not woman by Gisela Blake, okay, or as a Marianne back in those days. The term Marianne is derogatory. It means that you are either a gay man who is a prostitute or simply a tomboy, okay? So because of that, her name was changed. And now we find out from this page 343. Are you able to see the screen? Really?
Yes po.
Okay, all right. So you can see page 343, 344. And here we will have the history or the backstory rather of Xena. So Nan thought she was handsome, actually. Okay, it says here. He smiled and again looked handsome. Her name was Xena. Her name was Xena, and her story was a sad one. I had it from her one morning in the autumn of that year, as I lay in Diana's bed, and she came as usual to bring breakfast and to see the fire. To the fire, Diana herself had risen early and gone out. I woke to find Zena kneeling at the hearth, working quietly with the coals so as not to disturb me. I shifted beneath the sheets, feeling lazy as an eel. My quinn, in the clever way of quins, was still quite slippery from the passion of the night before. So quinn is a slang for the private part, okay, the girl, in Victorian England during the 1880s. I lay watching her. She raised a hand to scratch her brow, and when she took her hand away, she left a smudge of soot there. Her face against the smudge seemed very pale and rather pinched. I said, Zena, and she gave a jump. Yes, miss? I hesitated. Then, Zena, I said again, don't mind me asking you something, but I can't help but think of it. Diana once told me, well, that she got you out of the prison. Is it true? She turned back to the hearth and continued to pile coals upon the fire, but I saw her ears turn crimson. She said, they call it a reformatory. It wasn't a gate or a jail. That's the spelling of jail in Victorian England in 1880. A reformatory then, but it's true you were in one. She didn't answer. I don't mind it, I added quickly. She gave a jerk to her head and said, no, I don't mind it now. Had she said such a thing in such a tone to Diana, I think Diana would have slapped her. Indeed, she looked at me now a little fearful, but when she did so, I grimaced. I'm sorry, I said. Do you think me very rude? It's only, well, it is what Diana said about why they had you in there at all. Is it true what she said, or is it only one of her stories? Is it true that they had you in there because you kissed another girl? Okay, so you could see here how terrible it is to be a girl who happens to like another girl. Okay, she was thrown into prison for kissing a girl. Okay, so she let her hands fall to her lap, then sat back upon her heels and gazed into the unlit grate. Then she turned her face to me and gave a sigh. I was a year in the reformatory, she said, when I was 17. It was a cruel enough place, I suppose, though not so hard as other jails I heard of. Its mistress is a lady Mrs. Leatherby knows from her blog, and that is how she got me. I was sent to reformatory on the word of a girl I was friends with at a house in Kentish Town. We were maids there together. You were a maid before you came here. I was sent out as a skivvy when I was 10. Pa was rather poor. That was at a house in Paddington. When I was 14, I went to the place in Kentish Town. It was altogether a better place. I was a housemaid then, and I got very thick with another girl there named Agnes. Agnes had a shop, and she threw the shop over Miss for my sake. That's how thick we were. Thick means close, by the way. It's another slang term. She gazed very sadly at her hands in her lap, and the room grew still, and I grew sorry. I said, and was it Agnes that got you sent to the reformatory? She shook her head. Oh, no. What happened was Agnes lost her place because the lady didn't care for her. She went to a house in Dulwich, which, as you will know, is very far from Kentish Town, but not so far that we wouldn't meet of a Sunday and send each other little notes and parcels through the post. But then, well, then another girl came. And so we will find out that this another girl will be the reason why we'll be sent to jail. What happened, actually? What did this other girl do? Anybody? So Agnes, her sweetheart, Zena's sweetheart, was sent somewhere else, okay? And what happened next after? Yes, Michelle.
From what I understand, um the other girl, uh, who is not, yeah, the other girl tried, I don't know if the right word is seduce, but like tried to trick or seduce Xena, and then she, and I quote, said for Agnes's sake wouldn't kiss her, and then she told her lady.
Okay, very good. Yes, all right. You will see it for everyone, you will see it on page 345. Okay. So it is there that you will see that there was this other girl who meddled, okay, who meddled. And let me Okay, so 345 letter. So can you see? Can you see 345? Did you see that? Do you see that part? Okay, so according to Sina, this girl would look through all her things and found all her letters and all the tokens, okay, the parcels, the gifts between her and Agnes. So what she did was she would make her kiss her, okay. And finally, when Sina said, I wouldn't, for Agnes' sake, this girl now went to their boss lady and told her that she was being forced to kiss her, okay? So the lady wasn't believing until, the box of letters, which were pieces of evidence, were shown to her, okay? And it was a charge of tampering and corrupting. If you could look here and you see this part, there it says it was on a charge of tampering and corrupting. And she made sure Agnes lost her place too. Okay, even though Agnes wasn't there anymore, even Agnes was also um, damaged by the entire thing. Okay, and it would have sent her to prison along with me, except. Okay, so look here, that she took up with another young man again. And now she's married to him, and he, I hear, treats her shabbily. Okay, so the escape from jail for kissing another girl back then was to marry a guy. Even though the guy turned out to be treating Agnes shabbily. Okay? So instead of going to jail, she has to put up with with a young man who treats her badly. Okay, so you could see here the kind of othering back then, and all for just kissing another girl. Okay, okay. So we move on to the next. Okay, so here we also see on the next page, not really next page. Let me see. It was on page 355, okay? All right, so everyone go to 355, or wait, let me share screen. Okay, so that was the story of Sina. And then you remember that the context of the entire thing was that they are celebrating Diana's birthday. Okay, all right. And then here comes Dicky. If you remember Dicky, the one that doesn't like Nan because Nan looks more handsome than her. Okay, so now Dicky was said to be picked up as a subject of a book by a doctor. Okay, and in this part, okay, so on page 355, you could see on page 255 that Dicky was very, very proud of being part of this book. What is this book actually? Can anybody tell me? What is this book? Were you able to get that upon reading? This book, which Dicky says will assist us, okay, that means the community, will advertise us, okay, but then there is a kind of collective shudder around the drawing room. Why? What is this book exactly? Okay, so on page 355, Nan says, I cannot remember the words of it now. I know that, as Dicky had promised, they were not at all filthy. Indeed, they were rather dry. And yet her story was lent a kind of lewdness too, by the very dullness of the prose in which it was told. All the time Diana read, the ladies called out ribald comments. When Dicky's history was complete, they read another, which was rather lewder. Then they read a very saucy one from the gentlemen's section. At last the air was thicker and warmer than ever. Even I, in my sulkiness, began to feel myself steered by the doctor's prim prescriptions. The book was passed from lady to lady, while Diana lit herself another cigarette. Then one lady said, You must ask the book about that. She was 7 years amongst the Hindus. And Diana called, What? What must she ask? We are reading the story. cried the woman in reply, of a lady with a clitoris as big as a little boy's spring. She claims she caught the melody from an Indian maid. Okay, so remember exotic othering? We also have it here. Okay, so this isn't just sensual othering, okay, this part. Because they were also saying some exotic sexual stuff, okay, that they believe they heard from Hindus or they heard about the Hindus, okay? And how is this relevant to Sina now? Okay? So this has become relevant to Sina because there will be a point wherein the curiosity would escalate. And then one of the ladies would have such a very curious idea of looking under the skirts of Sina just to make a point. Okay, all right. So we look here at page 356. Oh wait, is it there? There, okay. 356, do you see that? Here. Okay. Can you see that? I wonder, she said thoughtfully. And one or two other ladies began to study me as she did. My stomach gave a subtle kind of lurch, I thought. She wouldn't. And as I thought it quite differently, we said, okay, so first they were aiming for Nan. But then somebody said, but Diane, you have just the creature we need. Your maid was a slum girl, wasn't she? Didn't you have her from a prison or a home? You know what the women get up to in prison, don't you? I should think they must fought until their parts are the size of mushrooms. Okay, so how is this entire thing sensual or sexual othering? Okay, anybody? What is happening here exactly? Especially here, okay? Mrs. Hooper, she called. Where is Blake? She is in the kitchen, ma'am, answered the housekeeper from her station at the Boulevard. She is loading her tray, okay? And then something bad is about to happen, okay? And what is this bad thing that will happen? Anybody? Do you remember what you read? Or did you read it all? Okay, so what is happening here? Okay, what is happening on this page? Let's do this bit by bit. What exactly is happening on this? Which concerns Xena? Yes, Michelle.
So far they're objectifying Xena.
Very
Even if she is a person, yeah.
yes. Okay, all right. So look at how they treat these things very casually. It's like when people are bullying someone, and to them it's a fun thing to do. But of course, it's not a fun experience for the one being bullied. Okay? But because they're not the one being bullied, it seems like it's a fun thing. Yes, it's
This is a form of classism, right?
well, not only that, it's also exoticizing because as you can see, they were comparing private parts of women.
Oh,
Yes, of course, it's also classicism because they were saying that there are different types of private parts according to where you've been, what kind of home or place you've been, where are you from, where did you originate, like that. Okay, so yes, it could be also that because they were saying that, the rich may have had their own appearance, okay, but they were saying that those who were not as rich, those who were in the slums, those who were taken into prison, and those who were from India, okay, they were saying that because they are so far from breathing, they have all the luxury of touching their private parts. And because they have that luxury, theirs became very big. Okay, so this is what's happening here. So are you getting it? The kind of sensual othering that's happening? More or less? Naiintindihan niyo naman na? Okay, all right. All right, and then moving on, when you go to page 357 and 358, so I want you to look at 357 and 358. Okay, let me share. Let me share mine. Okay, there. Can you see page 357 and 358? Okay, so this is where things get heated up. Okay. Okay, the ladies, Mrs. Hooper went to fetch Zena, okay, because they were having a debate. They were having a debate about what exactly is the appearance, okay, of the private part of Blake or Zena. So imagine that. Nananahimik si Zena. Bigla siya naman. All for what? For the fun of it and just to settle their curiosities, okay? So the ladies look at one another and then at Diana. She stood very calm and steady beside the bust of cold Antinoüs. But when she raised her glass to her lip, I saw that her hand was trembling slightly. I shifted from one foot to the other, my briefly flaring lust faded. In a moment, Mrs. Hooper had returned with Zena. When Diana called to her, Zena walked blinkingly into the center of the room. The ladies parted to let her pass, then stepped together again at the back of her. Diana said, "We have been wondering about you, Blake." Zena blinked again. "Ma'am, we have been wondering about your time at the reformatory." Now Zena colored. "We have been wondering how you filled your hours." Okay. "We thought there must be some little occupation to which you turned your idle fingers in your solitary cell." Zena hesitated, then she said, "Please, do you mean sewing bags?" At that, the ladies gave a roar of laughter. So Zena was very innocent about the entire talk or conversation or the context of it all, okay? And all the ladies now laughed, okay, because of her innocence, which made Zena flinch and blush worse than ever and put a hand to her throat. Diana said very slowly, "No, child, I did not mean sewing bags. I meant that we thought you must have turned frig stress in your little cell, that you must have frigged yourself until your foot was sore, that you must have frigged yourself so long and so hard, and frigged yourself a cup. We think you must have a cock." Okay, so imagine that. Suddenly, she was being accused of having a guy's private part, okay? And now she was being forced to show it to them. Okay, so we look into the next page, she had put her hand, okay, this is the she had put her hand upon Zena's skirt, and I could see the other ladies all gripped in their turn by her wildness, making ready to assist her. So imagine if suddenly this is happening to you. Okay, such fear, right? The sight made me sick. I stepped out of the shadows and said, "Leave her, Diana, for God's sake, leave her alone." Okay, so this is the turning point of the tolerance of Nan, okay? Because for all that Nan ever did, which might appear as too promiscuous for a lot of people, she has a good heart, she has a pure heart, and she doesn't want anybody being embarrassed, okay? And she saw what's happening, and she also feels that she's sexualized also as a sex object, not as a person. So she also relate to what's happening, and this is the reason why she was at the point already of losing it, and she did lose it finally on page 358. Okay, "Leave her, Diana, for God's sake, leave her alone." The room fell silent at once. Zena gazed at me in fright, and Diana turned and blinked. She said, "You wish to raise the skirt yourself?" Okay, so Diana was trying to make her be part of this scenario. Because for them, Zena was just a maid. So they don't really care about the feelings of a maid. Okay? They don't care about the feelings of Zena. And they were just having fun. Okay? And for them, it was just nothing. But of course, the kind of trauma that Zena would go through with all this, but that didn't matter at all for them. Okay? So I want you to leave Blake be. Go on, Blake. I nodded to Zena. Go on back to the kitchen. This is what Nan said. And Diana said, "You stay where you are," cried Diana to her. "And as for you," she said, fixing me with one narrow black glittering eye, "do you think you are mistress here? To give orders to my servants? Why, you are a servant. What is it to you if I have asked my girl to bare her backside for me? You have bared yours for me often enough. Get back behind your velvet curtain. Perhaps when we have finished with little Blake, we shall all take turns upon Antinous." Okay, so now she's implying that um, after Xena, it would be her turn. Okay, she would be the one to show her private part next. Okay, so just imagine the kind of scenario that's happening now. All right, so this is intense. This is quite intense, really, especially if you think about it as really happening um, in reality. Okay, all right. So what you could see here is that even though we have women here in the presence of all women too. There were no men here. Still, there was kind of othering that's happening. There was still some sexual othering that's happening. Okay? And not only that, but exotic othering also, because they were exoticizing those who were not part of their class, those who weren't part of their community. Okay. And if you remember when we were talking about the book that Dicky was saying, she was very, very proud to be part of that book, to be subject of that book. But that book is actually a book written by a psychiatrist. And the book mainly suggests that their kind are a crazy kind. Okay? So parang, syempre, hindi nila naisip yon na yung book na yon, ia-other sila. Okay? Ang naisip lang nila, aba, sikat tayo kasi subject tayo. Okay, the male doctor is actually writing a book which would, yes, advertise the likes of them, but not in a very good light. Okay, all right. And then for the latecomers, we are now going to page 369. Okay, we are looking at the parts of the book wherein the sensual othering is at its extreme. Okay, so now let's look at page 369, everybody. Wait, let me share my screen. All right, can you see? Okay, would anyone read page 369, please? Read. Starting from at once. Ito, at once. Wala. Gusto mag-read. Bakit? But you have seen it. Can you see it on page 369? It's actually here already. I'm actually showing it already on screen. So this is the part we're in. So it just in context, okay, so after defending Cena and being banished from the party, and Xena and Nan, they did they committed a mistake, which is to have their own fun, all right? Okay, but this gave them the consequences, okay, that they didn't think would happen, all right? So what happened was that they were caught in the act, okay, by Diana and her friends, okay. But if you would look at this part, all right, so if you remember Bonjour, Bonjour, naalala niyo ba si Bonjour, yung parang nickname ng Dildo, si Bonjour. Okay, so Bonjour was caught, okay, strapped to Xena, and then here, you will see here, one of the friends was actually suggesting more of the scenario. So imagine that, okay? The ladies at the door looked on and laughed. One of them, it might have been Evelyn, nodded to the trunk and called, "Use the strap on her, Diana." Diana curled her lip. "We will strap her well enough at the reformatory," she said when she returns there. At that, Zena fell to her knees and began to cry. Diana gave a sneer and drew her foot away so that the tears should not fall upon her sandal. Dicky, the necktie at her throat pulled loose, the lilac at her lapel squashed flat, and Browning said, "Can't we see them again? Diana, make them do it for our pleasure." But Diana shook her head, and the gaze that she turned on me was cold and as dead as the eye of a lantern. When the flame inside has been quite put out, she said, "They have their last in my house." Okay. So this is the part wherein she drives them away from her home. Okay. And what is it to the friends? It doesn't mean a thing at all. Okay. All right. So they were even suggesting that let them have a go of it, more of it. Okay. So these are like people who wanted to watch pornographic material or some sex scandals. Okay, so you could see the kind of um, sexualizing that these people do, and it doesn't matter for them if these people. Okay, so because this is happening in real time. Okay, so imagine this is part of the party. They were looking at it as part of the fun, and it didn't matter to them that we have two people who will lose everything. And that's what happened. They were banished out of the house of the Yang. Okay. And so what happened then was they were banished out of the house. Okay. And anybody who knew what happened after? Okay. What happened after that? Were you able to read that part? Nobody was reading. Nobody ever attempted to read. Ano yung mga nabasa niyo? Anong part? Binasa niyo ba? Hindi nagbasa? Ay, naku, hindi nagbasa. Patay tayo dyan. Okay, all right. So what happened was, okay, so they were banished. And all the while, imagine niyo yun, biglang nawala. Bigla kayong pinabalas. And you weren't even given a chance to get your things. And you were sent out to the streets with nothing, specifically nothing at all. And you thought you had each other. Okay. Well, Nan thought that she and Zena they will be able to work it out. But of course, Zena put the blame all on Nan. Okay. I mean, because of her, she lost everything. She lost the luxury of living in Felicity Place. She lost her chance to earn money, to save money for her dream. He lost everything. And so what happened was they sold all of Nan's clothes and they traded some of those for girls' clothes, okay? And they lodged into a one night place, okay, where the homeless would retreat and everyone there was coughing and they just have a blanket where they could sleep, okay. And Nan was saying that maybe this kind of freedom would help them find a better life, okay. But when she woke up, Zena was gone. And not only gone, but she took all of their money. So Nan was left with nothing. She was left with nothing at all. Okay, even the money was taken away, and even her coat, etc. So wala, iniwanan siya ni Zena. So now Nan has become desolate and desperate, and this is the part wherein she was at her rock bottom. Okay, and she had nowhere to go. And the only thing that she remembers is Sina telling her that maybe you should go back to your family. But why do you think Nan didn't go back to her family? I mean, it was easy to go back to your family. Your family will take care of you, whatever happens, right? Okay, Michelle.
At this point in the story, well, actually, ever since Alice, she went back the first time around,
Mhm.
wasn't she feeling some sort of guilt or I don't like she wasn't able to express herself fully with her family. And she took Alice's word na if she were to tell her parents that it would break them.
Yes, true. Okay. So it was the fear of not being accepted and, of course, pride. Because when she was there last, she was so accomplished, right? She was a successful woman, a celebrity at that. So she didn't think of going back. So what she did was she tried to find uh, two people who made her feel like family, okay? And this was after Kitty, when she resided or lodged or rented a place in a with a certain Mrs. Milman, okay, and her daughter Grace. But they were not there anymore. And if you remember when we watched that part, that's where she got acquainted with Florence. Okay, you remember Florence? Do you all remember Florence? Who Florence is? Si Florence yung ngumiti sa kanya, dun lang sa may doorway. Okay. All right. So more or less yun yung makakatuluyan niya, di ba? I told you. The one that she was able to have tea and cake with, but then because she was asking too many questions, Nan felt very uncomfortable about not telling the truth and lying. So she just disappeared. Okay, so she looked for this girl. So she looked for this girl, and it was a tedious looking or a search for Florence, but she was able to find her at least. And when she was able to find her, things became better, right? And you might think all the sexual othering would be done by then. Okay? Parang, oo, syempre, yung pagsa-sexualize sa kanya natapos na eh. Kasi si Diana Leatherby, that's what she did to her, right? She was heavily sexualized at Felicity Palace, okay? But there are other parts too, because if you would look on page 433, okay? Would you go to page 433? Wait, I'm trying to share screen. Here. Okay, so you could see the highlighted part, right? Okay. So still there was this fear of looking like a Tom. Okay. So if you remember Kitty, the reason why she married Walter, not out of love, but out of fear that something bad might happen to her. And then we find out through Xena that what's going to happen is that she will be put into jail. And this is the reason why Xena was put into jail and Agnes was able to rescue herself by marrying a man, right? Okay. So here at this part, we could see how she must not appear as gay. Okay. At Quilter Street, however, as I have said, there was no one to gasp. By the time Ralph and Florence came down for their breakfast, I would have my frock upon me and my hair in a curl. And then more often than not, Florence would only gulp at her teen boy. She had no time to eat. She was calling at the guild on her way to work. Ralph would help himself to the red herrings, stuff them in plates. My word, Cyril, but don't these look good? And she would leave without a glance at me, wrapping a muffler around her throat. Okay, so just in context, okay, Florence is the girl that she met. She dated and then she left without saying goodbye. Ralph is the brother of Florence. And then Florence had a sweetheart who died while giving birth to a child. And that child is Cyril. Okay. Right. So in this paragraph, we see that Nan had to wear her frock. Okay. So this is the time, this is already the part, chapter 3, wherein she's finally able to leave all her Leatherby, Diana passed behind, and she was now part of the household of Florence. her brother Ralph, and Cyril the kid. Okay. So you can see at this paragraph that Florence was trying to avoid her, even looking at her. Okay. And she was trying to look like a girl. Okay. And before that, in context, she was talking about how she was always doing the household chores because that's the kind of a deal. Okay. The reason why she was able to be part of the household is because she would be some kind of a helper. All right. And by doing hard labor, her body has now become more masculine than ever. And she was saying that if only Diana could see her now. But in this new environment, nobody was actually looking at her. Nobody gives a damn. Okay, so in other words, we could see now that situations are getting better. Okay, but situations are still not as good. Okay, because there are still some kind of secrecy. Okay, there are still inhibitions happening. Nan cannot fully dress in trousers, okay, the way she wants to. And we could see it all throughout before this, okay, that Florence likes to look at her, but she would not dare, okay. And even Ralph was very, very polite, okay. But at least you could see that nobody is getting objectified, especially sexually, right? Okay. So how does this story end? Has anybody been able to see the end of this or to read the end of this? How did the story end? Meron bang nakatapos dito? Meron bang very good na nakatapos dito? Wala. Mas madali kong papanoorin actually. Pero sayang eh. Ang ganda ng book. Ang ganda ng book. And lahat ng klase ng othering nandito. Pero pagtsatsagaan mo talaga. So if you have time, okay, kahit gawin yung parang 2 paragraphs a day, even after this semester and I'm not your teacher anymore, this is such a very good book. Okay. So how did this end? Okay, so what happens was that Florence now becomes Nan's sweetheart, right? And Florence a background, just something about Florence. So she's kind of an activist or activist, a socialist and feminist, and she helps out women who are in trouble, who are unfortunate. And her brother does the same thing, but for men naman, okay? So dalawa sila, tandem sila ng brother niya. Tinutulungan nila yung mga laborers, yung mga sobrang overworked and underpaid, okay? And they were pushing for socialism, okay? Because as we all know, Britain, okay, UK is monarchy, right? And because it's monarchy, all the monarchs have all the good stuff, but all the others who weren't part of the monarchy, of course, or who don't work for the monarchy, they all are so very poor, okay? Having a lot of stress because even though they worked hard, they could not even get promoted, they could not even get more money. And there is even this part there, the best friend of Florence, and she's a girl, and she is very, very happy that she has work to do. But that's because it's a work that nobody wants. You know what that is? To check the sewers, okay? Check the condition of the sewers. As in yung mga yung mga kanal-kanal, yung mga poso negro, titignan kung ano, okay? But she was so happy because at least she found work. She has her own money. Okay, for a typical woman, okay, that's already a privilege because a typical woman doesn't have money. So even that for her, even though well, she's very proud of her job. And the reason why she had this job is because nobody else wanted to take it. But he's very proud of it. Okay, so that's yung si ano, yung best friend ni Florence. So you could see here very terrible conditions during this time. And you could see on page 443, okay, let me show this to you. Ayan. From sensual othering, ito na yung sinasabi ni Michelle, okay? Kaya maganda, Michelle, pagtsagaan mo itong basahin. Okay, we're in, it's not just about sensual othering also. Ayan na yung dumadating na yung classism, okay? And this is actually a segue na to dangerous othering, okay? Because the underprivileged are getting fed up of their conditions, okay? And soon they are ready to fight, okay? They are ready for a revolution, okay? Yun kasi yung magiging mangyayari sa dangerous othering when we discuss about dangerous othering. Because dangerous othering now is about those who fight back because they were oppressed, okay? Now they were being othered as dangerous just because they tried to fight against the oppression done to them. Okay, so here we could see the women will never fight for shorter hours and minimum wages. Well, there are so many girls so poorly off that they'll take any work, however miserable. Okay, so this summarizes it on page 443. That summarizes the situation that's been happening, okay? The one that I've been telling you. And then we have, wait, did I stop share? Okay, and on the next page, on page 444, Nan would be asking Flo because Flo was too busy trying to revolutionize the entire thing or trying to work out what's best for everybody. And she was like saying, it's kind of useless. It's such an endless task. So why labor on? Okay? But for Florence, if we keep on doing this, soon things will change. Soon things will get better. And she was right. Okay, right. So again, how did this end? Might you be wondering how did everything end? Ano kaya nangyari? Sige, since hindi nyo nabasa, anong guess nyo? What is the ending? What happened in the end? Sige, sabihin nyo, for attendance, ano sa tingin nyo nangyari in the end? Sige, Michelle.
Guessing po that it was a happy ending because you were saying at the beginning of this book that this is one of the only happy endings that you've seen from a um sexually othered character. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, very good, Michelle. You were listening to me. Good job. Yes, it was a happy ending, a relatively happy ending. Very good. Okay, what do we have here? Teresa's Kitty wants Nan back, but she rejects Kitty and gets together with Florence. Okay, so is this a guess, Therese? Rain, is this a guess or are you saying what happened? Are you guessing or are you saying? Rain, are you guessing or are you saying? Okay, all right. Okay, so you were saying this is actually what happened, okay? And how did it happen? Okay, based on your reading, how did it happen? Kitty wanting Nan back and Nan rejecting Kitty and getting together with her. Can you point out where this happened? Anong page to nangyari? Nangyari? Itong part na to. Wait, it's my cat. Mainit na yung pinag- Okay, Rain. So, what page is this? Or anybody, what page is this? When Kitty wants Nan back, then, but Nan rejects Kitty and gets together with Dora. Okay, so everybody go to the last part. Go to the last part. Para hindi kayo mahirapan. Kita. Ay, sa last part.
Miss, is it page 529? Or after that pa?
What page?
529.
529. Okay, so the who's talking? Is it Yansin? Yansin? Is that you? It sounds like you, but is that you?
Michelle po.
Ha?
Michelle po.
Ah, si Michelle pala. Okay. Akala ko si William. Boses kayo. Okay, so you're saying 529. All right. Okay, so let's go to 529, everyone. Nahanap ko din. Okay, very good, Michelle. All right, okay. So everybody go to page 529. Try natin itong yan. Share screen share. All right, okay, so, ayan. Excuse me, miss, she said. Are you the gal that gave the lecture? I nodded. There is a lady just outside the tent then. Says, will you please step up and have a word? Annie laughed and raised her eyebrows. Another lecture tour offer, perhaps? She said. I looked at the girl and hesitated. A lady, you say. Okay, so just in context, what happened was a man helped Ralph to deliver a speech, okay, to 700 or more people about why socialism is a good thing and why the monarchy, the government, that I'm forgetting about them, etc., etc. Okay, so suddenly there was a lady who wanted to see her, but before that, there were ladies asking her to help them with their own with their own lectures. Okay, kasi nga magaling si Nan. Siyempre, she doesn't have stage fright. She used to be on stage. Okay, right. So here we see. Okay, I gave a start and looked quickly at Florence. A lady in a veil. There was only one person that could be. Diana must have seen me after all and watched me give my speech, and now sought me out for. Who knew what queer purpose? The idea made me tremble. When the girl stepped away, I turned to gaze after her, and Florence shifted in her seat and stared with me. In the corner of the tent, there was a square of sunlight, where the canvas had been tied back to form a doorway. It was so bright I had to narrow my eyes to look at it and blink. At one edge of the square of light stood a woman, her face concealed, as the girl had said, by a broad hat and a width of it. As I studied her, she lifted her arms to her veil and raised it. And then I saw her face. Why don't you go to her? I heard Florence say coldly. I dare say she has come back to ask you back to St. John's Wood. You shall never have to think of socialism again there. I turned to her, and when she saw how pale my cheeks were, her expression changed. It's not Diana, I whispered. Oh, Flo, it's not Diana. Diana, it was Kitty. I stood for a moment quite dumbfounded. I had seen two old lovers already today. Okay, so because prior to this, she also saw Zena, and she also saw Diana, and both of them already have other. lovers. Okay. And here was the third of them, the first love, or rather the first of them, my original love, my one true love, my real love, my best love, the love who had so broken my heart. It seemed never to have fired quite properly. I went to her without another glance at Florence and stood before her and rubbed my eyes against the sun, so that when I looked at her again, she seemed surrounded by 1,000 dancing points of light. Okay, so we could see here that Nan is still struck by the beauty of Kitty, right? And then there's Kitty saying, Nan, she said, and she smiled rather nervously. You have not forgotten me, I hope? Her voice shook a little, as it had used to do sometimes in passion. Her accent was rather purer, with slightly less color to it than I remembered. Forgotten you? I said then, finding my own voice at last. No, I'm only so very surprised to see you. I gazed at her and swallowed. Her eyes were as brown as ever, her lashes as dark, her lip as pink. But she had changed. I had seen it at once. There were one or two creases beside her mouth and at her brow that told of the years that had passed since we were sweethearts. And she had let her hair grow so that it curved above her ears in a great glossy pompadour. With the creases in the hair, she did not look any more like the prettiest of boys. She looked, as the girl she had sent to me had said, like a lady. As I studied her, so she gazed at me. At last she said, You seem very different to when I saw you last. I shrugged because I was 19 then. I'm 25 now. 25 in 2 weeks' time, she answered, and her lip trembled a little. I remember that, you see. Okay, so Kitty still remembers her birthday, okay? I felt myself blush. Ayan, kinilig naman si Nan. And could not answer her. She gazed past me into the tent. You can imagine my surprise. She said then, when I looked in there just now and saw you lecturing from the stage, I never thought you'd end up on a platform in a tent, speaking on workers' rights. Neither did I said. Then I smiled, and so did she. Why are you here at all? I asked her then. I'm in rooms at Go. Everyone has been saying all week that I must come to the park on Sunday since there was to be such a marvelous thing in it. Have they? Oh, yes. And are you quite here quite alone then? She glanced quickly away. Yes, Walter's in Liverpool just now. He has gone back to managing. He has shares in a hall up there and has rented a house for us. I'm to join him when the house is ready. Okay, so we see here, Kitty is together with Walter. Okay? Pero why did she want meron ba? Ayan na. Kasi mukhang busy si Walter. Wala nang time for her. Nabubore si Mrs. Okay. All right, so here she glanced quickly away. Yeah, Walter's in Liverpool just now. He has gone back to managing. He has shares in a hall up there and has rented a house for us. I'm to join him when the house is ready. And you're still working the hall? Not so much. We had an act together. I know, I said. I saw you at the Middlesex. Her eyes widened. The time that you met Billy Boy? Oh, Nan, if I had only known that you were watching. When Bill came back and said he'd seen you, I couldn't look at you for long, I said. You were so bad as that. She smiled, but I shook my head. It wasn't that. Her smile grew faint. I said after a moment, so you don't work so much? How's that? Well, Walter's kept busy with the managing now, and then, well, we kept it quiet, but I was rather ill. She hesitated. I was to have a child, okay? So, ano yun pala? Nabuntis si Kitty, pero nagkaroon siya ng miscarriage, okay? And Nan thought horrible. Okay, the thought was horrible to me in every way. I'm sorry, I said. She shrugged. Walter was disappointed. We have quite forgotten it now, however. It only means that I am not quite as strong as I once was. We fell silent. So ito na yung awkward moment between two exes. Okay? Maybe you can relate here. May mga nakaka-relate ba dito? Okay, that's right. I was quite as a boy. She laughed and found at once not understanding. He said too that you were living with, ito na yung chismis part. Naalala niyo si Billy Boy? Yung, nakilala niya na negro, di ba? Ayan, okay. So yun yung nag-chismis kay Kitty. Na nakita niya si Nan at kung ano itsura ni Nan. Okay. Yan. So, parang nag-catch up lang sila dito in this part. Okay. She blushed still harder. And are you with her still? No, I live with a girl now in Bethnal Green. And Kitty says, I hesitated. But then I did what I had done with Zena 2 hours before. I moved slightly into the shadow of the tent, and Kitty followed. That's her over there, I said, nodding towards the seats before the platform. The girl with the little boy. Annie and Miss Raymond had moved away. Si Annie, ito yung best friend ni Florence. Si Miss Raymond, to yung girlfriend. And Florence sat alone now. As I gestured to her, she looked over at me, then gazed gravely at Kitty. Kitty herself gave another little look and then a nervous smile. It's Flo, I said, who's the socialist and who has got me into all this. As I spoke, Florence took off her hat. Immediately, Cyril began pulling at the pins that fixed her hair and twisting the furrows about his fingers. His tugs made her redden. I watched her for a little longer, then saw her look again at Kitty. And when I turned to Kitty herself, I found that her eyes were upon me, and her expression was rather strange. I cannot stop myself from gazing at you, she said with an uncertain smile. When you ran off, I was sure at first that you'd be back. Where did you go? What did you do? I tried so hard to find you. And then when there was no word of you, I was sure that I would never see you again. I thought, oh Nan, I thought that you had harmed yourself. Okay, so inisip ni Kitty, nagpakamatay si Nan. Dahil broken heart siya sa kanya. But then, what did Nan say? I swallowed, you harmed me, Kitty. It was you that harmed me. And Kitty says, I know it now. Do you think I don't know it? I feel ashamed to even talk to you. I am so sorry for what happened. You needn't be sorry now, I said awkwardly. But she went on as if she had not heard me. That she was so very sorry. That what she had done had been so very wrong. That she was sorry, so sorry. Okay, so parang sobrang guilty ni Kitty, right? At this point, you could see how guilty she had been for what had happened between her and Nan. At last, I shook my head. Oh, I said, what does all that matter now? Matters nothing. Doesn't it? She said. I felt my heart begin to hammer. When I did not answer, only continued to stare at her, she took a step towards me and began to talk, very fast and loud. Oh, Nan, so many times I thought about finding you and planned what I would say when I did. I cannot leave you now without saying it. I don't want to hear it, I said in sudden terror. I believe I even put my hands to my ears to try to block out the sound of her murmurs. But she caught at my arm and talked on into my face. Okay, so ito na. Ito na yung sinasabi ni Rain kanina na hindi niya ma-point out kung anong page. Okay, so here at page 533, ayan. You must hear it, you must know. You mustn't think that I did what I did easily or thoughtlessly. You mustn't think it did not break my heart. Why did you do it then? Because I was a fool, because I thought my life upon the stage was dearer to me than anything. Because I thought, okay, continuing on page 534, that I would be a star. Okay, so you could see a Kitty is just very serious about her career. That's all that really mattered to her. And we could understand why she chose Walter over Nan. Because, of course, I did not ever think that I would really, really, really lose you. She hesitated. Outside the tent, the bustle of the day went on. Children ran shrieking, stallholders called and argued. Flags and pamphlets fluttered in the May breezes. She took a breath. She said, Nan, come back to me. Okay. So, andito sa pages na to, 533, 534, andito. Yung kung saan si Kitty nagpi-plead. Okay, for Nan to come back to her, but then Nan, Nan has already moved on. Okay. Okay. So Kitty was saying, come back to me. One part of me reached out to her at once, left to her like a pin to a magnet. So ito si Nan, ito yung feeling niya. She feels like a pin, ready to jump, attracted by the magnet. Okay, and Kitty was the magnet. I believe the very same part of me would leap to her again, would go on leaping to her if she went on asking me forever. Then another part of me remembered and remembers still. Come back to you, I said. With you still Walter's wife? Oh, that means nothing, she said quickly. There's nothing like that between him and me now. If we were only a little careful. I don't know if you remember this word, okay? Careful. Careful, I said. The word had made me flinch. Careful, careful. That's all I ever had from you. We were so careful. We might as well have been dead. I shook myself free of her. I have a new girl now who's not ashamed to be my sweetheart. But Kitty came close and seized my arm again. That girl with the baby, she said, nodding back into the tent. You don't love her. I can see it in your face. Not as you loved me. Don't you remember how it was? You were mine before anyone's. You belong with me. You don't belong with her and her sort, talking all this foolish political stuff. Look at your clothes, how plain and cheap they are. Look at these people, all about us. Look, you left Whitstable to get away from people such as this. I gazed at her for a second in a kind of stupor. Then I did as she urged me and glanced about the tent at Annie and Miss Raymond, at Ralph, who was still blinking and blushing into Mrs. Costello's face, at Nora and Ruth, who stood beside a platform with some other girls I recognized from the boy in the boat. Just in context, boy in the boat is a kind of a Tom's bar, okay? And that's where she had a great time because she was celebrated there. She was recognized as Nan King, and everyone really loved her without her knowing, okay? By all the Toms there. And Nora and Ruth were friends, okay, of Florence. Okay, where are we? Okay, I had noticed her before, sat Zena, her arm looped through that of her broad-shouldered sweetheart. Okay, so she was here in this part. Nan was looking at everybody that she had been to, or she had been with, rather, recently. Okay, so she is now looking at the kind of community that she is now part of. And she was thinking that whatever it is that she has with Kitty, it has finally expired. She already belongs to a place where she doesn't have to be careful, that she could be herself, that she doesn't have to be cautious because there will be people who will be saying bad things about her, or because she will have she will be put into trouble, okay? So mga ganon. So tinitignan niya talaga dito na iba na yung environment niya, okay? She already has a different group, but this time it's a rather beautiful group because it's a support group for people like her because it's the same type of people to know how it is to be objectified, how to be othered, to be discriminated, how to be oppressed. All right. So I could not meet her smile with one of my own, but when I turned again to Kitty, my gaze was level, and my voice when I spoke was perfectly steady. You're wrong, I said. I belong here now. These are my people. And as for Florence, my sweetheart, I love her more than I can say. And I never realized it until this moment. She let go of my arm and stepped away as if she had been struck. Okay, so Kitty was not accepting everything. Okay. You are saying these things to spite me, she said breathlessly, because you are still hurt. I shook my head. I'm saying these things because they're true. Goodbye, Kitty. Okay. So this is the part where finally Nancy has finally moved on. Okay. Especially when Kitty cried out, Nan, she cried as I made to move away from her. I turned back and Nan says, Don't call me that. I said pettishly. No one calls me that now. It ain't my name and never was. Okay, so if you remember, Nan was the nickname that Kitty gave Nancy. Okay, her real name was Nancy Astley Wright. And then she was given the nickname of Nan King. And now Nancy was reclaiming herself, okay, devoid of anything that has anything to do with Kitty, okay? So Kitty swallowed, then stepped towards Nan again and said in a lower chastened tone, Nancy, then listen to me. I still have all your things, the things you left at Stamford Hill. I don't want them, I said at once. Keep them or throw them away. I don't care. There are letters from your family. Your father came to London looking for you. Even now they send me letters asking if I have heard. My father, I had had a vision on seeing Diana of myself upon a silken bed. Now more vividly I saw my father in the apron that fell to his boots. I saw my mother and my brother and Alice. I saw the sea. My eyes began to smart as if there was salt and down. You can send me the letters, I said thickly. I thought I'll write and tell them of Florence. And if they don't care for it, well, at least they'll know that I'm safe and happy. Now Kitty came nearer and lowered her voice still further. So dito sa part na to, talagang ayaw na umuwi ni Nan. 'Di ba? Parang talagang nakahanap na siya ng bagong pamilya. And she has accepted that her own family will not be able to understand her and accept her. So this is something which is different from the BBC series because in the BBC series, the ending was she took Florence to meet her family. Okay, so umuwi si Pansy sa kanila. So it's the book. Yun yung ending dun sa BBC series. There was a huge difference actually because the ending of the book is different. Okay, all right. So where were we? Okay. Now Kitty came nearer and lowered her voice still further. There's the money too, she said. We have kept it all, Nan. There's almost 700 pounds of yours. I shook my head. I had forgotten about the money. I have nothing to spend it on, I said simply. But even as I said it, I remembered Zena, whom I had robbed, and I thought again of Florence. I imagined her dropping 700 pounds into the charity boxes of East London, coin by coin. Would that make her love me more than Lillian? Okay, so just in context, si Zena kasi nagtatry mag-earn ng 7 pounds para makapagtayo ng dormitory. Okay, so that was what Zena wanted. That was her dream. And then si Florence naman, she's always helping out and she's very much into charity work. So Nan wasn't thinking about the money for herself. Okay. He is finally thinking about other people. Okay, so because of that, she said to Kitty, you can send me the money too. I said to Kitty at last, and I told her my address. And she nodded and said she'd remember. We gazed at one another then. Her lips were damp and slightly parted, and she had paled, so that her freckles showed. Involuntarily, I thought back to that night at the Canterbury Palace when I had met her first and learned I loved her, and she had kissed my hand and called me mermaid, and thought of me as she should not have. Okay, so remember when we did Frankenstein, there was closure, diba? Ito naman yung closure din. Kasi we started off with Dan and Kitty, and now this is the part where they will separate forever. Okay? Perhaps the same memory had occurred to her, for now she said, is this how it's to end up then? Won't you let me see you again? You might come and visit. I shook my head. Look at me, I said. Look at my hair. What would your neighbors say if I came visiting you? You'd be too afraid to walk upon the street with me in case some fella called out. She blushed and her lashes fluttered. You have changed, she said again, and I answered simply, yes, Kitty, I am. She raised her hands to lower her veil. Goodbye, she said. I nodded. She turned away, and as I stood and watched her, I found that I was aching slightly, as from 1,000 fading roses. I cannot let you go, I thought, so easily. While she was still quite near, I took a step into the sunshine and looked about me. Upon the grass beside the tent there was a kind of reaper bower, part of some display that had come loose and been discarded. There were roses on it. I bent and plucked one and called to a boy who was standing idly by, handed the flower to him and gave him a penny and told him what I wanted. Okay, so in the end, she sent a parting rose. Okay, parang alala niyo dun sa umpisa, di ba? Binigyan siya ng rose, Kitty, and that's how everything started. And now Nan is giving Kitty a rose to end things. Okay. All right. So now let's go to the last page. Okay. Ang pinaka nangyari sa huli. Okay. Very ending was this. Okay. Ayan, ito na. The last scene was actually between Flo, Florence. Okay. Teka. punta tayo sa, ano muna, para may context. Okay, let's go to page 539. Ayan. Eto. So 539, and eto, this part. I watched you talking with Kitty, sabi ni Florence. Yes, sabi niya. You said she would never come back. She looked desperate. Okay, so just in context, when Florence and Nancy were already having a kind of a relationship, they both knew that whatever happens, Nancy would always love Kitty and Florence would always love Lillian. Okay, so ito yung mga parang exes nila talagang. Lillian is already okay, pero sabi ni Nancy, hindi rin naman siya babalikan ni Kitty. So parang dead na rin si Kitty. Okay? So parang meron silang agreement na, o sige, kung wala namang babalik sa atin, hindi hanggat may bumalik tayo. Eh, bumalik si Kitty. Okay? So Florence was all the while thinking, ay, bumalik si Kitty. Binalikan niya si Nancy. So it means our relationship will be over now. Okay? Kasi ganun yung agreement nila. Okay, kahit anong mangyari, hindi mapapalitan si Kitty. Okay? At si Lillian. Okay? Kasi pareho ang in love na in love si Florence tsaka si Nancy dun sa kanilang mga first loves. Okay? Alright? So here, that is the part. Okay, yan yung context. And then, so Flo was saying, you said she would never come back. She looked desperately sad. I'm sorry, Flo. I'm so sorry. I know it ain't fair that she did. And Lillian will never. Ito si Lillian. Ito naman yung kay Florence. She turned her head. She really came to ask you back to her? I nodded. Then, would you care, I asked quietly, if I went? If you went, she swallowed. I thought you'd gone already. I saw a look upon your face. And did you care? I said again. She gazed at the flower between her fingers. I made up my mind to leave the park and go home. This is Florence. There seemed nothing to stay for, not even Eleanor Marks. Eleanor Marks, yun yung parang celebrity na sobrang idol na idol ni Florence. Then I got as far as here and thought, what would I do at home with you not there? She gave the daisy another twist, and 2 or 3 of its petals fell and clung to the wool of her skirt. I looked once about the field and turned to face her again and began to speak to her, low and earnestly, as if I were arguing for my life. Flo, I said you were right. What you said before about that address I gave with Ralph, it wasn't mine. I didn't mean the words, at least not then when I said them. I came to a halt and put a hand to my head. Oh, I feel like I've been repeating other people's speeches all my life. Now, when I want to make a speech of my own, I find I hardly know how. Okay, so just in context, ito kasi, di ba tinulungan niya si Ralph mag-speech or mag-deliver ng speech? But for Nan, she didn't really think about the meaning behind that speech. She was just into delivering the speech. Kasi nga, performance level. Because Nancy is a performer. And nag-away sila ni Florence because Florence was like saying, I wish that you really, really mean what the speech was all about. Okay? And not just, performing it as if it were an act. Okay? So yun na yung context nun. So yun yung pinag-awayan nila. Ayan. And then Nan was finally saying, I feel like I've been repeating other people's speeches all my life. Now, when I want to make a speech of my own, I find I hardly know how. And then Florence says, if you're fretting over how to tell me you are leaving, kasi ito na, I am fretting, I said, over how to tell you that I love you, over how to say that you're all the world to me, that you and Ralph and Cyril are my family, that I could never leave even though I was so careless with my own kin. Okay, so ito na yung confession. Finally, we see Nancy now finding her voice, finally letting go of her past, finally recovering from the heartache of Kitty, okay? My voice grew thick, she gazed at me but didn't answer, so I stumbled on. Kitty broke my heart. I used to think she'd killed it. I used to think that only she could mend it. And so for 5 years, I've been wishing she'd come back. For 5 years, I have scarcely let myself think of her, for fear that the thought would drive me mad with grief. Now she has turned up saying all the things I dreamed she'd say, and I find my heart is mended already by you. She made me know it. That was the look you saw on my face. I raised a hand to stop a tickling at my cheek and found tears there. Oh, Flo, I said, then only say you let me love you and be with you, that you let me be your sweetheart and your comfort. I know I'm not Lily. No, you're not Lily, she said. I thought I knew what that meant, but I never did, till I saw you gazing at Kitty and thought I should lose you. I've been missing Lily for so long. Ito yung namatay na girlfriend ni Florence. Ito yung nickname. Lillian yung pangalan. It's come to seem that wanting anything must be only another way of wanting her. But oh, how different wanting seemed when I knew it was you. I wanted only you. Okay? So, yung sinasabi ko, happy ending. Okay? And this was the ending. Okay, the very end part was I shifted closer towards her. The paper in my pocket gave a rustle, and I remembered romantic Miss Skinner and all the friendless girls who Sina had said were mad in love with Flo at Fremantle House. So in context na to, madami pala nagkakagusto kay Florence, hindi lang alam ni Nancy. Parang si Nancy, ang dami din niya palang fans na hindi niya alam. Kasi iniisip niya si Kitty yung may fans, na nadadami lang siya. Okay, I opened my mouth to tell her, then thought I wouldn't just yet, in case she hadn't noticed. Instead, I gazed again about the park, at the crush of gay-faced people, at the tents and stalls, the ribbons and flags and banners. It seemed to me then that it was Florence's fashion, and hers alone, that had set the whole park fluttering. I turned back to her, took her hand in mine, crushed the daisy between our fingers, and, careless of whether anybody watched or not, I leaned and kissed her. Okay. Tyrell still squatted with his frills in the lake. The afternoon sun cast long shadows over the roofs and trampled huts. From the speaker's tent there came a muffled cheer and a rising ripple of applause. So that's the ending, right? It was a happy ending for us. Okay, so for fans of Kitty and Nancy, it wasn't a happy ending. Okay, so just a brief biography of Sarah Waters. She was born in Wales in 1966. She's still alive, but she has a PhD in English literature and has published articles in lesbian and gay writing and cultural history, has worked in bookshops and libraries, and now teaches for the Open University, though she has given up full-time academic work in order to concentrate on writing fiction. All right, okay. So were you satisfied with the ending of the novel? Okay, hear your thoughts. Were you satisfied with the ending of the novel? The Unseen. Were you satisfied with the ending of the novel? How about you, Patricia? Were you satisfied with the ending of the novel? You can write on the chat box by way of attendance there. So the question is, were you satisfied by the ending of the novel? Si Michelle, okay na. Okay na si Michelle. Michelle, kahit umalis ka na. So. Yeah, because you've been talking already for a long while. Okay, so Isaiah says, Miss personally for me, I'm just glad Nancy got her happy ending. Pat, why don't you address it to everyone para na record? Kasi may record on direct message. Okay? And tell me why. Okay, so for Isaiah, for Nigel, he was just glad that Nancy got her happy ending. Okay. How about the others? Were you satisfied with the ending? Okay, so as Michelle had said, she was a good listener when I told all of you about how this is a a rare lesbian novel, because most lesbian novels are all ending tragically or hurtfully. Okay, but this one's, it had happy ending. Okay, according to Irene, I like that she was able to express herself. Okay, very good. All right. About the others? Sino pa? At ba nakapagsabi na? Let's see. Yansin, hindi pa nakapagsabi, tsaka si Rain. Did you like,
Yes.
I mean, were you satisfied? Why?
Miss, sorry for the ending of the. Yes,
Mm-mm.
Miss.
Yes. What is Okay, that says because she's wag mo ako i-direct message para ma-record yung recitation mo. I-ano mo, address mo to everyone, please.
Miss, do I chat my answer din po? So everyone?
Oo, you send it to everyone. Kasi hindi siya
Okay.
record pag direct message sa akin.
Okay, thank you, Miss.
Okay, same thing with you, Alexis. Okay, Rain says yes, basically she was able to express herself in her sexuality. And even if it came with a lot of hardships, it paid off and she found someone she could be happy with. Yes, it's true. All right. Alexis, ikaw na lang ang last. Dapat gandahan mo. Ikaw yung last. Do you think the ending was satisfying for you? And why? Alexis, are you still there?
Miss, yes po, I'm typing po. Hindi ko kasi miss ma-mute or ma-unmute while typing.
Okay, sige, sorry. Sige. Go ahead. Baka naman novela na yan, darling, ha? Novela na pala. So we will start with dangerous othering on Wednesday. Okay. This is the end of sensual othering. So for Wednesday, we will be starting with our discussion of dangerous othering, focusing on children. Okay. So Matilda, we will be discussing Matilda.
Ito na po.
Right, so according to Alexis, the ending was satisfying, especially in the part where Nancy finds love and acceptance with Florence, embracing her identity after a journey of betrayal and self-discovery. Also because it offers hope, emotional closure, and a sense of personal growth and acceptance. Next naman, Alexis, parang AI ang
Oh,
nagsulat.
syempre! Ay, grabe, Miss! Ayun pa ako magsulat!
Just kidding, just kidding. Okay, all right. Thank you very much for being here. I'll see you on Wednesday and we will discuss Matilda. Okay, take care. Have a good evening. Bye.
Thank you po, Miss. See you po on Wednesday.
Thank you, Miss. Thank you, Miss.
Thank you po, Miss.